Alors, bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies. We are February 20th, and without further ado, I will do the land recognition. So the city of Dieppe recognizes that the land on which it operates is part of the unceded traditional ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq. And similarly, dear colleagues, let's have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And just a reminder, tonight's meeting is also will also be available on social media. And if you need interpretation services,
Translation is available. OK, alors, présentation de...
So, let us begin with a presentation on corporate visibility policy. Pauline Cormier, please. Good evening and welcome. Good evening, Your Worship and members of the Council. We would like to present a project that we're working on for corporate visibility. We don't do a lot of advertising in outside our facilities, so we'd like to start. So the presentation that I'd like to make tonight is to talk about the big line, or to give you an overview of what we're doing in this area and what we're doing with associations as well. So let's begin. I'll give you a bit of context for space sales. So the infrastructure, we do sell some sponsorships at the Uniplex, some at the rec center as well, but you have to really look for them. And elsewhere outside, we have almost nothing. And then to sell those sponsorship, it's not a complicated process, but there's no and we don't know the value of the spaces that we're selling there. So, and we have inconsistent practices. So we think that we're losing a lot of potential sales in sponsorship. And you know that some of our exterior facilities, like the Dover, is very busy. I went there in the summer and it was very busy. So what we did to come up with a policy is hire New Focus here in Dieppe. So we hired them in last March to work with us to lay the groundwork. We looked at what was being done elsewhere, and I should mention that a number of municipalities do this work for just one facility, but we're looking at a group of facilities, and I'll tell you which ones later. So this firm rather, also assessed our facilities and assessed the space that we have available. They identified the value of the spaces. What are these spaces worth? What could we rent them for on an annual basis? And we looked at the potential for additional revenue. So as I said, we hired New Focus to conduct that exercise. They did the work for us because there's a lot of work, traffic, foot traffic, and things like that. So last November, they provided us with a draft that you have in your packages there. So here are our recommendations. There are 8 facilities that we think would be possible clients. So the soccer, the pickleball, tennis fields, the softball field, and the dog park. So those are the 8 facilities that we're talking about currently. There are 322 spaces that could be sold or leased. I know that we won't get this all done in the first month, but if we can start with those, it would be a good start, and it would be potential revenue for the municipality. Our recommendation is to develop a new corporate policy, so a policy that will regulate or provide a framework for selling corporate visibility. And so our recommendations is just to come up with a standard and make it fair, and come up with fair for everyone. Now, this policy objective would be to regulate the sale of advertising space in recreational and sports facility, to increase and maximize revenue from the sale of advertising space, and to support the associations in this city. So we could support associations by potentially allow associations to earn money as well. All right, the scope and application. Well, the applications that I just mentioned, I won't go through them again there, but I know that we already have a potential sponsor, disc golf as well. There's a bit of work being done in that. So we'll start with the biggest groups. We might be able to add sponsorships during individual events as well, rather than just in the fields themselves. But we're talking about the fields today. All right, the guiding principles behind the policy. Well, we want it to be a simple and fair process for everyone. A revenue sharing approach. So what revenue, what spaces would be sold to the associations, or made available to the associations rather. Fair and transparent space allocation. Structure and tool for nonprofit organizations. So, and the rates are, there could be rates developed and forms, and I think those are in your kit as well. And visual quality and variety of visibility. That's another guiding principle. If I go to the arena and I see a band or an ad rather, that it does not adhere to the language policy, well, then we have to let them know. So in this way, we would be talking, we'd be proactive with people. We'd be talking to them before they create their ads. Okay, so our responsibilities, the responsibility of the city would be to administer the program, set guidelines, identify physical spaces, who would get what, to allocate space to stakeholders, to advertise, they authorize and approve the advertising, and I just mentioned that in terms of the language policy. And it would be to sell space reserved for the municipality. So what could the city sell or reserve right away? Now, since I've been in charge of this file, I have been talking to people who have buying ads, and they appreciate all these details being settled in advance. So to date, things have been going very well with the organizations that are in the arena. Now, the responsibilities of the organizations now, that would be to adhere to the established process. They have to agree to the process that's established. They would have to comply with the guidelines that we'll be setting up, promote and sell their advertising space. So they would take care of their own space, and that would be their job. to collaborate with stakeholders as well, and proactive communication with the city. So we'll definitely we'll be having contact with these organizations. We want to make sure that communication goes both ways. But as I said, we already started this in October of last year. So what are the next steps? We wanted to present the recommendations to City Council, and we hope that it will be approved. There will be meetings with the nonprofit organizations. We started with the outdoor fields because that's who we want to start with. So and then we want to translate the tools and the templates, website text as well. And then there will be a public launch as well. So we're looking to the beginning of May to launch the program. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Mr. Lanting. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. It's a great initiative. I am fully behind it. And I think it'll be interesting for us and for the groups to go and get some more funding. Now, who of all the advertising spaces, we have 13 of them. So at the arena, it's mostly 100. The arena is mostly minor hockey. Is that the case? Yeah, it's divided up, between all the different groups. But okay, that's a good initiative. And here's another question: who would be responsible for selling that advertising? For us? Well, we'd have to talk about that internally, but it could be someone in-house, or we could hire a company and we give them a percentage. That's something that's done as well, because this is quite a lot of work to manage. And I know we're not going to sell all the ad spaces in the first month, but yeah. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you. Councillor Gaudette. Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one question. Do you think, and maybe it's too early to answer this, but do you think you'll be able to sell different dimensions of signs, different sizes of signs, or is it all going to be the same size? Well, it'll depend on the foot traffic. If we've got the score table, the scoreboard as well, but everything that's around, everything that's on fencing around the fields would all be the same size. It would all be the same kind of standard size. But in other locations, the sizes would be different. All right. Councillor Lewoutsi. Thank you, Your Worship. It's a great initiative. It's good to have standardization in this area, and it'll be interesting to see the recommendations that New Focus will come up with, compared to what other municipalities are doing. I remember in the past, we just have to make sure that the city of Dieppe isn't competing with other associations for funds. Our money comes from citizens. Small and medium sized businesses just have limited funds, and if we remove some of those funds, companies, sports and recreational associations will have difficulty getting more money. But I'm sure you'll come up with a great formula that'll work, and that's what we want as well. So thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Worship. I applaud the initiative too. What I'm going to be interested in with the policy is how are we going to manage the repercussions other than the money. But when we promote something and when we approve certain ads, there's always a question of what is it, of taste. what are we going to allow and what are we not going to allow? And how will we manage that? Have you had preliminary discussions on how that's done in other communities and what we could do here to make sure that, like I'll give you an example, an ad that sexualizes women, for example, something that is maybe not is good, that we don't see as good, but other groups could. So how are you going to manage those aspects? There are linguistic aspects, but there are also, like green issues. Are we going to require people to take an approach that promotes this energy saving? So that's the aspect that interests me. So could you develop a little bit on that? We will be talking. The policy will be talking about everything that's excluded. But okay, well, yeah, but the gray zone. How will we manage that? When it's not clear, who will have the last word on those the acceptability of ads? Mr. Richard. Go ahead. In the policy, there are guiding principles that are quite broad. And the program that we'll set up for staff to administer it will have more details. But there's also, we can't foresee everything. But in the program that we've set up, the city will always reserve the right to refuse or to turn down, because in the process we are the one that gives that approves them. So there will be no ads that will be placed in a facility without us giving it the green light. And so there's the language policy, but there's also the question of what's acceptable or not. So we reserve that right to do that work. But that's something that we've been thinking about recently. And that's why we're here as well tonight, to get your views. We haven't really settled everything, but we're working on it. Well, my recognition, or I think we should have a level of approval for ads that fall into the gray zone. So XXX, that goes, but as soon as you get into the gray zone, I would recommend going to someone more senior who will exercise that discretion. But that would be my comment. All right, Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. We were talking about sales of advertising, but I'm curious to know what we can expect in terms of revenues. Have you all already determined that in your project, or? Well, according to New Focus, there are 322 spaces to spell, and annually they're worth a total of $390,000. Okay, well, that's quite a large number. All right, thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? All right. If there are no further questions or comments, Mr. Richard. Thank you. I just want to add to one of the questions, about the impact on other groups. And Pauline has done a lot of house, like she's done a lot of cleaning up. The point is to allow community groups to go and get more money. And if you look at the example that you have in your kit now, and it's in draft form, so please don't, show that publicly yet. But what we want to see is, as Pauline mentioned, we want to see, we're going to be settling multi-year agreements, 2, 3, 5 years. Community groups, talk more on an annual basis. And another interesting thing that Pauline is working on is to develop packages. And that's something that we don't have right now. But it'd be interesting to go and get different types of businesses, new types of businesses, who want, a presence in every facility. And if we, by offering packages, we think that we can help our groups raise a bit more money. So Pauline, was mentioning the tools and the templates, but and organizations don't necessarily have that expertise. So we have a framework, and Pauline has done a great job of this. We really want to see what we can give to the community. Any questions or comments? All right, well, thank you for the presentation, and we will wait to hear for further results. Miss Paula Albers for the Boys and Girls Club of Dieppe. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight to talk about organization. I know many of you are very familiar with us, but for those of you who aren't, we're BGC Dieppe, which was formerly the Boys and Girls Club. We changed our name 2 years ago to be inclusive to all children and youth, so that is why we're now BGC Dieppe. This year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary in our community, and we have made an impact in the lives of thousands of children and youth over the years that we've been here. Sorry, technology. Sorry.
Help is on the way.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. So our mission is to provide a safe and supportive place where children and youth can experience new opportunities, overcome barriers, and build positive relationships and develop confidence and skills for life. This has been our mission since the formation of BGC. So we tend to make sure that all of our programs and everything we do is following that mission. Our vision is for all children and youth to discover and achieve their dreams and to grow up to be healthy, successful, and active participants in society. And one thing that we noticed is that every child's dream is going to be different. One might want to be an astronaut, but one might want to be the hairdresser or a lawyer. So we want to make sure that we're providing the tools that they need to choose the dream that they want, and not to be trying to guide them into different dreams that we feel may be what they should go for, but to allow them to have that vision for themselves. And our core values are belonging, respect, encouragement, working together, and speaking out. So in everything we do with our youth and in the community, we make sure that these values are being followed always. Now, so what does 50 years of impact look like? So as you can see from the pictures, there's some community events and some of the things that we do throughout the year. We do community and family engagement, relationship building and mentoring, providing respectful, inclusive, and engaging environments, physical activity, health, and safety, leadership, growth, and empowerment, and learning and career development. We do a lot more than that, but that's some of the things that we do throughout our year to give the children and youth the tools that they need. So the programs that we offer such a variety of programs, and they're constantly changing to meet the needs of the children and youth in the community. So what you see here now may not be what you see next year or the year after, because we may add things or we may take things out that the children are just not looking for at the moment. Some of the ones that we really focus on are the job readiness, we have a program called Skill for Success. So we bring in youth ages 15 to 29 and we give them a job. But not only do we give them that job, we give them the skills they need to go on and obtain further employment. So we give them, we do interviews with them, we help them with their resume, we talk about how to act in the workplace environment. So we give them the whole package. We do some STEM activities, science, math, those type of things. Tutoring and homework is one that we really focus on. Mental health and wellness is a huge one right now. Our youth really need those programs. So we have Flex Your Head, Take It Easy, Bounce Back League, and we're continuing to add more. We have a new community program coordinator, and she's in the process of creating new programs for us to bring to the schools and bring to other community organizations that we can share with. We don't do any virtual program right now, but as we all know, things change. So we do have the ability within a day to just switch over most of our programs into virtual if need be. Hopefully we won't have to do that again, but we do have that ability. So last time there was a gap in our services because we had to translate all of those programs into virtual, but now we have the ability to do it right away. So there'll be no gaps. We do offer licensed childcare, which is an important part of what we offer as well, because with the influx of families into the community, childcare has become something that is really difficult for families, especially for younger children. So we have 19 licensed spots in our early years. So that helps out some of the newcomers. Most of our early years children are newcomers from newcomer families. So, and then we also work on things like financial education, crime prevention, community engagement, volunteering. We offer scholarships, nutrition and food. So there's a lot of different things that we provide for the youth. And like I said, if we are talking to youth, we do surveys twice a year. So if the youth start to mention something that we're not offering, then that's the time when we sit down with the program team and we figure out how we can bring that into our organizations to give them what they need. So the results of that impact, we did what's called a learning and impact survey. So we spoke with the youth and we asked them some questions. And these are some of the results. I won't give you them all because there was like 50 some questions, but just to review a few. 85% of our youth say they feel more comfortable being themselves, which is huge. 95% of youth say they feel like they matter more to people. 92% of youth say that they make better choices for themselves. 97% of our youth say that they are more physically active. 89% of our youth say they're more excited to try new things. 91% of our youth feel they are better able to take steps to reach their goals. 95% of our youth say they're more confident in their abilities. And 93% of our youth say they work better with others. So as you can see, the programs and services we're offering do have an impact on the youth, and we hope to continue to make those numbers even higher. So some difficulties that we face. One is our transportation on 2 levels, because not sure if you all know where we're at, but we're out in the Lake Burn area right across from the old airport. And public transportation is a little bit difficult out there because we have the shuttle, and the shuttle is not quite what the parents need, especially for parents that don't drive. And a lot of our newcomer families, they don't have vehicles right now. So to get their children to and from, to pick up either from our license program or in the evenings for our drop-in programs, they're having difficulty. The other is that one of our buses is getting old, so we need to get a new bus so that we can offer more pickup for the youth in the evenings especially. We do pick up from the school, so the children all have access after school, but in the evening programs, we need to provide that service because where we're at, we want to reach all of Dieppe, not just that little pocket that we're in. So we're really trying to work on our transportation. Space, we are growing huge. So as we're growing, we need to find alternatives to where and how we're going to offer our programs. So we are trying to work with schools. We're trying to work with other community organizations to make sure that we're not missing out on any programs because of space. Our building is big, but we do house a lot of children every day. So, and one that I'm sure every organization you talk to is operational funding, like wages for quality staff and inflation. So that's something that I think everybody's dealing with. Opportunities. So we're very excited about the opportunities coming for us. Right now, we have created relationships with 3 schools, and we have meetings with 4 more schools set up. There's talk of cooking programs, there's talk of other types of programs within the school that we can go in and offer, so it's very exciting for us. With other BGCs, we're planning on working together more to do try community events, so that the awareness is there that there are BGC clubs all over the Greater Moncton area, and that we all work together in some aspect, but then we're separate in others. So for the mental health and well-being, we're creating new programs for children, youth, and family, especially around things like stress, anxiety, depression, because children and youth sometimes don't understand what they're feeling. So if they have the background and they know what stress is and the difference between stress and anxiety and where to go and how to deal with those things, then it gives them a little bit of a head start when they do struggle. And we're also now, something new that we're offering is parenting programs. So our first parenting program is starting in March, and we're doing a small program on anxiety and depression in children. So we're giving the parents what it looks like, also where they can go for help, what kinds of things to watch out for. So we feel that that's really important that we start to involve our parents more in the programs that we're offering. So that's one thing that we're really working on. Community partners, we have a lot of community partners. We're really building that. We did our strategic plan last year, and some of the staff from the Ville actually participated in giving us a little feedback. And one of the things was the community, and that's so important. So we work with, obviously, the Ville, and we have been working on different projects. We're in the process of seeing what we can do together more and more. We've been working with the Early Childhood Family Resource Center. They are bringing groups of parents of younger children in to learn cooking. And so we provide them a space to do that, and our gym as well for the little ones. We're creating a relationship with Kathy, the Rotary Club, the Francophone and the Anglophone school districts. We're involved with both. So we do have the one Anglophone, and then a lot of our youth go to the English middle school. So any of the kids that go to Lou McNair and here in Dieppe, they end up going to the English middle school, Louisville. So we're trying to work with them as well because we want to reach those children as well. We work close with United Way, both of the BGC clubs in Moncton and Riverview, Maison de Chêne. We've had a couple of meetings. I have had a couple of meetings with the new director there, and we're looking at ways that we can partner together, especially for the older youth, 12 and above. Both of our organizations are struggling to be with them, and also, we have that new survey, the new report that's coming out, and that's very exciting because that's going to give us some ways that we can provide more for that age group. Tim Hortons Children's Charities we work with, Irving, BGC Canada, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We've done some partnering with them. So we're really out in the community, and we're constantly looking for where we can go and who we can partner with. One, to make sure that we're not duplicating services, but two, to make sure that there's no gaps. because there are gaps in certain services. So we're looking at different organizations to see, can we work together to fill some of those gaps? And so our motto is opportunity changes everything. So for over 50 years, BGC Dieppe has been removing systemic barriers and creating opportunities for children and youth in our community. Through our life-changing programs, community-based services, and relationships with peers and caring adults, BGC Dieppe helps kids and teens develop the skills they need to succeed in life. Thank you for having me tonight.
Merci. Thank you very much, Mrs. Albers, for your presentation. Question de la part des membres du Conseil.
Question by council members.
I don't see any question, which I will interpret as you did a great presentation.
Thank you.
And I've always had a soft spot for the Boys and Girls Club as a longtime past president, and seen the work that was being done there by staff. In fact, I've seen some of the staff there ended up working for the city at one time or another, and so on. So it's a real good program, and I think, you know, you're doing a great job. It's not easy. It's tough sledding, as we say, and I think you do a great job, and I've brought them back in our community to a degree where it's a major contribution to our youth and to our community, and especially out in that end of the city, because there's not a lot happening, and hopefully we can get the buses there longer in the day. It's one of those things, but again, congratulations on behalf of, I'm sure I speak for everybody here, for the work that you've done so far, and I'm sure that the city of Dieppe can continue to contribute, and perhaps at a different level, and see you have success, so that the kids have success. That's how we measure, right? It's the successful kids doing well in our community and staying out of trouble. So.
Absolutely.
Encore une fois, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you. Now we have the representatives of the Association of the Military Veterans of Dieppe. I was told it was we were expecting to see Larry Como, but apparently he was bumped by a superior officer. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. My presentation will be in French this evening. I'm very pleased to be in front of you this evening to give you an update about our activities that we, as an association, organize. I'm the first vice president of the Association of Military Veterans of Dieppe. As you know, we began in November 1979, and we are celebrating our 45th anniversary this year. In our presentation this evening, we'll be touching on our mission, objectives, successes, challenges, future projects, and if you have any comments or questions, we're here to answer them. Our association has as mission to honor our comrades who have fallen on the battlefield by organizing respectful ceremonies at the cenotaphs in Dieppe. We celebrate D-Day, the Atlantic Battle, and other things that we do with the Legion, and many other events over the course of a year. We look to the well-being of our members in Dieppe and in the surrounding area. We provide support by providing visits by groups and providing essential information for Veterans Canada. We support the Cadet Corps in Dieppe, and we promote activities in schools. Amongst our objectives, our association has someone who ensures liaison with the schools in Dieppe and offers to go and meet with students periodically to explain the reason why we have Remembrance Day and to provide a history of former military personnel. With the 306 Cadet Corps of the Dieppe Army, we offer a scholarship to someone who is doing post-secondary schooling. We encourage the participation at funeral services for members of our association and other veterans when we're asked to participate. Also, we organize monthly meetings to promote comradeship and to organize interesting programs in support of these meetings. Our successes in the past year have included, and that we continue this year, will be provide transition for the executive. Last year, we lost our president, Nelson Dumarc, very suddenly. It was a challenge to come back up from that, and we changed many members on the executive. But I have just arrived in Dieppe, and we meet on a monthly basis in order to ensure that our members have the information, all the information possible that they need. Certainly, you can get information on the internet, but providing it on a one-to-one basis doesn't happen very often. So that's what we're there for. We're also looking at rebuilding our website. Many changes have been made. I'm the webmaster currently, and I want it to be easier and more friendly for our user-friendly for our veterans. Some of them don't like to go on the internet, some of them because of being spammed, but we are trying to encourage them to use the internet to visit. We have many pictures of our recent undertakings, and this website also shows a presence within the organization. Among our other successes is the modernization of our constitution. We've updated and revised it to include not only veterans and current military, but those who served in a uniform. For example, ambulance and RCMP have previously been members. We want to spread the word because the majority, 50%, have participated within Canadian Armed Forces, and they are veterans. Among our challenges for many years now are similar to others. It's fundraising. It's difficult to get funds for veterans. We ask our veterans to be available when fundraising is done, but unfortunately, many of them are not available or cannot be involved. And so soon we'll be asking our cadets to be helping us for fundraising. We also store equipment for getting to places that don't have stairs. So we have a market, and it's bigger, so we need more space. We're constantly checking to see if there are other locations that could accommodate us. And we're looking for new members and volunteers. Unfortunately, today, most of the veterans who have taken their retirement aren't associated with military organizations. So our role is to help them through the information that we can share with them by internet or by newsletters, for example, in order to make sure that we are available to help and support them in their files or with their Veterans Affairs. These are complicated cases. Our future projects, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, 5 and 6 June of this year, we had a surprise from the Minister of Veterans Affairs, Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, who announced that the 80th anniversary of D-Day is this year and will be held here in Dieppe, Moncton. The last time this happened was in Halifax 5 years ago, I think. And so we are currently looking at our marching orders in order to execute this celebration. There will be all kinds of activities, and very shortly we'll have an adequate plan. We're working with the staff headquarters from Ottawa and the Department of Veterans Affairs as well. We have some smaller projects underway. We're looking at challenge challenge coins. We're making them and giving them to people who do presentations and others who come to our meetings. We also are purchasing new flags and banners. I can't tell you how many there are, about 15 or so, I think, that have been faded by the sun. So we need to replace some of them this year. Very probably, we're going to have to do some fundraising to find a replacement for these items. So allow me to express my very sincere thanks to the Municipal Council and the City of Dieppe for your support and your very helpful devotion to our association. I see someone from the council, along with the mayor, who are attending our presentations. I also want to thank Jonathan Desroches for his professionalism and his undertaking, who plays a very important role in our ceremonies. Thank you. Thank you. Questions by members of council? None? So first of all, allow me to thank you for your work. You've said that you're only a few months here in the area, so taking up the mantle from your previous president is a big job. And I think on the several occasions that we've met, I have very great confidence in that you're going to be able to do the work as the veteran that you are. You've been well trained, and we also were very pleased to learn that one of these ceremonies is going to be happening here for the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And so we owe a great deal of thanks to Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, who brought this to us and to be involved. The City of Dieppe has always shown, however, that it has been attentive to our veterans, given the name of the City of Dieppe alone is a starting point which continues the history. We've had a long and strong relationship with the people of Dieppe in Normandy. And I think all the opportunities we've had in the past, for the 50th anniversary, for example, we are on all the sites, but there have been a lot of various war monuments through Normandy. And we also had the opportunity to bring some young cadets with us, and they have always proudly represented us. And people in Normandy were always very proud to see the quality of young people who accompanied us and how active they were, how happy they were to help others. I thought you wanted to tell me that I should stop talking? Oh, no. No, it's a question. Questions or comments? Because I'm at the end of what I wanted to say. So if there are no further questions or comments, once again, thank you very much for your presentation and for your participation. Thank you. Item 4, there is a representative of the Boreal Child and Youth Expertise Center. Sylvie Leblanc is here. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome. Good evening, councillors. Thank you for having us here. I'm Sylvie Leblanc. I'm the co-director of the Boreal Center. I wanted to explain to you the kind of work we do. So in Boreal, we opened our center in 2017. The big question that we get, this question, and why we opened the center, is that we looked at the data for the Greater Moncton area, the city itself, Greater Moncton. We're in third place of the highest rate in Canada with regard to sexual infractions against children. And when we talk about sexual exploitation of children, we're in second place compared to all the data. So this is where Boreal was created. We are a service under sexual violence prevention, which is in Sainte Anne. So this is the head office, and we are a service underneath that. So we did a feasibility study, and we looked at these figures. So for us, we looked at what was already in place and how could we help young people. There wasn't necessarily any specialized services with regard to sexual violence, and this is where we fell upon a support center model. It's called a National Children's Advocacy Center. And this model was created in the US. It's been around for some 60 years now. There are more than 1,000 advocacy centers in the States. And a Crown attorney decided that the cases of sexual abuse are the most difficult to pursue. And he wanted to understand why. A study was undertaken, and through this study, it was shown that a young person, after having been sexually abused, will have to repeat his or her story 10 to 16 times to various professionals and to all the services which are not adapted to a young person. So this was it. The family has to go to different professionals. It could be the investigation with the RCMP or social development, a hospital visit to be looked at. And so the idea of a support center means that all of these support services are under one roof. These services are adapted to young people, and we are specialized in doing that. In Canada, we have a national association. We're under Justice Canada, which supports these advocacy centers. And so in 2017, we were the 26th center to be opened in Canada, the first one in New Brunswick. Currently, there are 2 centers in New Brunswick, and there is a kids' place in St. John. So the model, with a model like this, we need support. So we signed a protocol of agreement, and we have this since 2017. So it creates a multidisciplinary team. You see all the partners here who are around the table. There are many of us, but these are all the partners who offer these services for young people who are victims of sexual violence. What's different with our model is that this protocol allows us to work together. Sometimes it's difficult to work together when you don't have these protocols. And because of confidentiality, we can't share information between the RCMP and social development. However, this protocol allows us to share this type of information. And if we have a file that goes to Boreal, a parent calls, it could be 3 months later, and they want information about the investigation, we can call the RCMP and get that information for them. So we are creating a team which can work together. And so we work together, and if we can do this, then we can improve services for young people, and we create better files because we can if we can get to court, then there's a better chance of having it proved. Here, I put our figures, the data since we opened. And so overall, the general services that Boreal offers, as I mentioned, the investigations are done through Boreal. There are no investigations that are done through the RCMP or at social development. All these investigations are done at Boreal, and the RCMP come to our center. Investigations are begun there. If we need to have a hospital examination, they offer therapy services as well. So it goes on. When we opened Boreal, I don't think that we expected to be all that busy with regard to sexual violence, but in comparison, our first year for interviews and checks, we did 135 investigations and interviews. If you compare it to another center, which is in Halifax, they would have had 163 of investigations, but they deal with all kinds of violence, and we only deal with sexual violence. So what is our objective with regard to providing services? The model as such is supposed to look after all types of violence. But as you can see, with the figures that you have dealing with sexual violence, we are overcome. And maybe one day we will be able to get there. That's our objective. However, there is still a lot of things happening, that a lot of services and supports that we have to have in place before we move into another area of violence. So as you can see, there are some 4,116 interventions that we've undertaken. Generally speaking, more girls come to our service than boys. The 300 hospital investigations, the number of young people we've seen, the number of parents. It's also important to note that we provide a lot of support to parents because they also are living through very difficult times. The parents also have to deal with a great many things. So it's important for us to offer services to parents, the treatment plan and therapy. It's a joint treatment and therapy plan. So the parent can also participate in order to get these therapeutic services. So the challenges are that there is too much demand for our services, and people sometimes wait up to 8 months for therapy, and this has been constant now since 2017. So it's constantly a challenge to hire more employees in order to be able to answer the demand for our services. However, the demand is there. It's important that we have services, especially for our region. In the future, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking, even though we love where we are right now, we're on Amiro Street, but we lack office space. So we're looking to buy a bigger building so we can have more office space, and we would be able to hire more employees, have more therapy rooms. There are 2 interview rooms for the RCMP, and also we would be able to use at least another one. A satellite office for the Kent area. This has been a need as a result of the feasibility study that was done in 2017. This feasibility study decided which region Boreal would serve, and it's the southeastern part of the province, with the first building for Greater Moncton. And this was the explanation behind this. We have a detachment for the RCMP in Rishibuktu and also social development. And we have many communities, Native communities in the Kent area. It takes them 35 minutes to come here into Moncton. So this is always a project that we're constantly happening. There's a big project underway. We got financing with federal public security to create a specialty with therapy services for young Native people, Indigenous groups, and LGBTQA2+. The reason for this is that we have looked at our data and we noticed that these two communities, the Indigenous communities and LGBTQIA, we had an increase of 15% and 22% for young Indigenous who were looking for access to our service. So we felt the need to apply for a project funding to provide services to those two groups of young people. And that's it for this evening.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Merci, mais merci à vous.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Leboutier, thank you. Thank you for the information. It's very moving when you see the statistics, and surprising too for the region. You know, those statistics, you don't necessarily see them. So I have two questions for you. First, how many people are on your team? How many people work at your center? Well, the in-house team is 5, and if you include the multidisciplinary team, there are about 30 of us. But the team that, so at Boreal, we offer therapy services and reception services as well. So there are 5 of us at the Boreal Center. All right, well, the statistics, now you're on the ground. Are you seeing an increase or a decrease of need? Well, an increase in terms of our own internal statistics. It's difficult to find recent statistics in our work, but you know, for our therapy service and other services, that it increases every year. All right, thank you very much, and thank you for everything that you do. Councillor Godbout, thank you very much for the presentation. It's disturbing to see information like that, but it's important that we talk about it. So thank you for presenting this to the council. You know, when we were looking at the statistics, I was wondering that, you know, in your work, are you seeing a connection or an increase in sexual violence towards children? Is there an increase with online activity? Are you seeing that? Yes, you know, and COVID did not help either. You know, since COVID, we've seen a hike in cyber intimidation, and sexual exploitation as well has gone up 12%. So I mean, and it's understandable. People are more online. They stay at home more. So, and they're more at risk. But we're always working on it, and we do a lot of presentations in schools for prevention. You know, to explain the concept of consent and the sharing of photos on the internet. And all right, well, thank you, and continue doing that work. It's important. Thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, I don't see any, so thank you for the presentation. It's a topic that we don't hear a lot about, unfortunately, at least within these 4 walls. But it's important to be able to talk about everything that's happening in our community, regardless of where it's happening. So thank you for your work, and thank you for being here this evening. All right, thank you, and have a nice evening. All right, that brings us to item 5, a presentation on the community development approach. Denis Leblanc. Thank you for having me here tonight. I wanted to talk to you about a change in the department. This is part of my department that I head up. So, as you know, you were presented a leisure master plan that contains certain recommendations. So I'll be talking to you about some specific recommendations, and I'll come back to you in March or April with the full master plan, with what was done and what wasn't done and what's coming up. So recommendation 1.1 was to simplify and improve the city's role in supporting community organizations that offer programs. So we've got about 40 or 50 organizations that we work with, and we saw two of them here this evening, the Veterans and BGC, but there's about 40 or so that we manage on a day-to-day basis. So action 1.2.3 was to strengthen the current focus of recreation staff to assist community organizations that offer programs by expanding and improving the programs offered in Dieppe. So our division has a process where members of a community work together to improve their quality of life and strengthen their ability to solve local programs. And I think that the community service department and the leisure sector have a huge role to play, and that's why we're making changes within the department to better address that definition. So the objectives of our approach were to develop tools to ensure the smooth operation of organizations working in our community, and to build the capacity of community organizations to plan, implement, and evaluate programs effectively and sustainably, and to develop self-sufficiency, sound financial planning, and management. Promote efficient, transparent governance, strengthen the skills of the organization's members, involve residents in the development of our associative sector, to be kept informed and provide information in terms of community organizations, and then share our municipal values. So whether it's La Francophonie or other policies that the city has. So we're convinced that by talking with the right people, we can make improvements. So here's the structure that's been proposed. At the beginning, I thought I should reverse it or turn it upside down, but it's basically the same thing. So there's collaboration between everyone. So I'm the director of community development. I have two officers that I have assigned to this sector. It was a bit mixed up before, but so I've assigned two officers to work on these topics. So I think you know the first one very well. So Sonia Babineau is the cultural and social groups lead. And then Jonathan Desroches is responsible for sports groups. And then we have the community groups. So the direction that I gave at the beginning, there were often our officers would go and meet with the organizations in the evening. And it was good. We learned a lot. But what I suggested in the coming year is to at least once a year, our officers take time to meet the employees or the president and to have really good in-depth discussions. It's great to go to a committee meeting, but sometimes they go long and you have to talk, and you talk about a lot of things. But every month we'll be going to meet with each organization. We'll be talking about challenges and opportunities, and we held our first meetings. And I see that the things have improved compared to the past there. So we'll continue with that. And that doesn't mean that if an organization doesn't have specific needs, we won't sit down with them. But I think there are other tools that can allow us to meet those same objectives. I was talking about monthly meetings. So we'll be talking about challenges, success stories, possibilities to collaborate, the needs. It was almost like we were working in silos before, but today we had the Boys and Girls Club, and we met with them. That was one of the first groups that we met with, and we were able to look to kind of easy, low-hanging fruit there to help that group. Now, this is 40. We're talking about 40 monthly meetings, but I think it's worth it. Now, in current needs, there's a development for internal policies. Community groups are there to do the right thing, but they don't necessarily have time to develop internal policies. So those are tools that we can build within my department, and we can take that task away from them, or we can take that burden off of them, if you will. Members' roles and responsibilities. Often volunteers will say, I like play, my young person or my kid plays hockey or ringette, so I would like to get involved. But we're going to try to better define the roles, and so that when you say yes to volunteering, you'll know exactly what to expect. We're also hearing that there's a lack of commitment in volunteering, and we've seen that since the pandemic. People have gotten used to staying home and to go out less. But if there's a way that our my department can help find more volunteers, we will. And there's also a lack of networking, training, and sharing. Groups kind of work in isolation. They don't necessarily work collaboratively. And we've seen a few examples where, one group is developing a policy and they'll share it with another group. But we're trying to see if there's more sharing that can take place. Current needs, communications and marketing. We know that there are a lot of channels to communicate on, but we want to help associations identify the most practical or most effective ways of communicating. Fundraising and sponsorship, are there tools that we as a municipality can help these groups with, so that they can go and get money more easily. Strategic planning as well. People do the best that they do, or the best that they can. So can we, through our department, help them better focus on certain items? And then there's collaboration as well. So this evening, or this afternoon, or this weekend, sorry, we had a magic evening, and we had participation from community groups. So we'll be looking at doing better work in terms of collaboration. So concrete steps. We had our first meeting with some 40 organizations, and we developed a template for general regulations, or bylaws rather. So, if groups, have a document that's already written out, then they just have to kind of select what they want. That would be helpful. We also did a pilot project to assist in drafting bylaws. So we offered the assistance of a consultant to help organizations. We also did a pilot project with strategic planning. The challenge was, developing these before, but we're trying to help groups work on this. A group that can do good strategic planning, that helps us as well in our it can help them in their day-to-day work, because they'll have specific guidelines. We're currently in the process of developing 4 training sessions for organizations: March, May, September, and November. And we're going to try to help these organizations to help them better perform. So we're excited about offering the first meeting. And then there's numerous discoveries and collaborations that we've made. We hope that our work will help these associations go further. Now, there's also newsletters. So can the city combine those, and maybe we can help reduce the workload of associations? And resource sharing as well. So if maybe by offering templates, we're interested in sharing the resources so that each organization doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's basically it. I just wanted to share what my department is doing with community groups, and I thought, it's quite important. These are 2 items within our master plan, and they're important to us, and I think they will be beneficial in the long run. Thank you, Mr. Leblanc. Any questions from councillors?
Ouais, vous êtes plate à soir, hein? Je pense que ça fait plaisir à bien du monde pareil.
I think a lot of people are happy with that.
Alors, merci pour la présentation.
Thank you for this presentation.
De voir le progrès qui se fait.
We're happy to see the progress that's happening. Otherwise, we certainly would have heard about it this evening. So thank you. Great work.
Maintenant, la mise
Now,
à jour,
an
qui arrive,
update
sur l'arrêté sur les
on
arbres.
the tree bylaw
Alexandre, Monsieur Alexandre
with Alexandre Truchon,
avec lui ce soir.
who brought his bouncer with him this evening.
Avec lui, là, je suis au
He brought some
contrôle
staff with him. I'm not sure where.
Alors, bonsoir, bienvenue.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Yes, we came to give you an update about the tree bylaw and give you an overview of the figures we've been able to collect over the past building season. So we'll give you a quick context setting. This very ambitious bylaw was passed last June. So we're in the first 6 months of a very innovative bylaw for the Atlantic region, and it's a fairly complex one. So we'll tell you what's been happening since then, and we'll have recommendations for the coming months. When it was passed, there was an undertaking to revise it after 18 months and present any improvements or amendments that should be necessary. This was the initial undertaking. As soon as it was passed, we hired a forestry technologist who was able to deal on a daily basis with applications for permits, and he had training in forestry and implemented procedures to implement the bylaw. We were happy to hire Justin in this position, and he's the manager for this project as well. And he brought with him some 15, 20 years of experience to this service. So Justin is his role is going to oversee procedures, provide advice for any improvements, and have his expertise. So we have work procedures. We continue to document them and improve them. And I also remind you that this was done through a record year of building and construction. So that's not a little thing. And we're pretty proud of the work that has been accomplished. So let me do a reminder of the various scenarios when you get an application for authorizing the cutting down of a tree. So if you're in an intervention zone in the urban perimeter, that we added to the Dieppe Boulevard too. If you are in this boundary, the first division is that if this is not the case, then if you're the annexed territory or the rural, then we're looking for a declaration. So we look at the applications in this scenario. If you're in the intervention zone and you have a building, commercial space or industrial building, developing a new street, a neighborhood, this is where we split off and we ask for a study on trees of interest. So we do an inventory, we identify where the trees of interest are, an assessment is done and is made to the applicant, and this person has then to provide us either a planting plan or a protection plan or replacement for be it residential, commercial, or industrial. Then this study has to be provided before the certificate for cutting down the tree is issued. You can come back to that, and we do an assessment, and the deposit is returned once the project is in, at maximum of 2 years for the planting. If you're in the case where you are not creating lodging, commercial space or a street, then we do a deeper investigation. If it's a dangerous tree, sick or dead, we assess all the trees on the same basis. We look at exotic species or domestic species, they have to be assessed, and Justin will tell you about the method. So if you justify this cut and there are trees left on the site, there is no replacement normally required, and so there are no costs. If, however, you determine that replanting is required, that is, the tree has been deemed to be in good health, but the person still cut it down, or there are no more trees on that land, there have to be a certain minimum number of trees maintained, then we have a deposit on the planting, and then there's a validation and return of deposit once the trees have been planted. So I know that's complicated. So we present all of the scenarios here, starting with the lodging or housing and cases for residents, and then we talk about the declaration. So for 2023, 161 certificates have been issued. This represents about half for construction, development, and others, and the other half were requests for dangerous or sick trees, or that could have an impact or damage a structure. So let's look at construction and development. So for some 80 projects that were assessed, we have on average a project value of $620,000, but the median was $313,000. So the distribution is not equal. So half the projects that we assessed had an estimated value of more than $300,000, and the other half were under $300,000. However, when we look at the costs or the deposits that we were asking for, this represents approximately 0.6% of the value of the project. So the requirements for replanting and the deposits that accompany them represent 0.6% of the value of a project. So in the case of a $300,000 project, we're talking about $108,000. I'm sorry, $1,800. I think that's it. And there, in some cases, it went over 1% of the project, but these are some cases the project was under assessed and it was corrected. So in the case here, you have a project of 6 units in row housing. There was a normally a requirement of 6 trees to be planted, but the person kept a band of trees along the street. So you see along here a wooded area, which we credited as an equivalent of 2 trees to be planted. And so 4 trees would be planted in the backyards. So $3,000 as a deposit was required for this project. The projects where we had an agreement with Expansion Dieppe, so we don't take a second deposit, if you will. So this is already covered under Expansion Dieppe. So we're talking about some 300 trees which are under deposit for being planted for the projects that were assessed this year, in 2023 rather. And if you only take the housing projects where there wouldn't have been this requirement, so in some cases, there was a certain rate of planting that was required through the tree bylaw. If you exclude those projects, then more than 200 trees are going to be planted that wouldn't have been planted previously in the past. So financially speaking, there were 2 cases where people did a cash in lieu rather than replanting a tree for a total of $1,000. With regard to permit costs, we're asking for $35 for application costs and $100 for assessing the land. So this is $8,400. This funding is provided directly in fees, and then in the deposits, there is a protection deposit. So if they kept a tree line or something else, the protection deposit is about $30,000 for these projects and $120,000 for trees that are to be planted. The holder of the permit has 2 years to replant the trees. And so if the project is not completed, you can't negotiate extensions. Sometimes there are delays in construction projects, but you have to create, how would I say this, You have to be reasonable about this, but clearly we ask that the project be completed in 2 years' time. In the protection fees, we had 7,800 square meters that are covered, and so 13 trees of interest in that. It's not always clear how to conserve trees when you need to be draining and leveling. There are some technical people on site, but it was possible in some cases. And what we ask that there be a protective fencing to make sure that these trees will be protected. I'm going to ask Justin to talk about the calculations and what goes into the calculations for the requirements for planting and for protection. Thank you, Alexandre. Good evening, everyone. I will talk to you about how we calculate compensation. With regard to construction progress, there are 3 things that we look at. We want, with regard to commercial space, there's 1 tree to put per 100 square meters, and for every housing project created, could be a 20 apartment block or 1 unit is 1 tree. And if you create a street, then it's 1 tree every 10 meters. And then the requirements also include the trees of interest that have been cut down. There's a 30 centimeters of diameter, the species with a lifespan, desirable, the structure, and we'll get into that a little further on. And then there are ways that development can qualify for credits. So if you are able to save or maintain trees of interest on this lot, they're qualified for credits, and also qualify for credits if you are able to save wooded areas. So 1 tree planted per 100 square meters saved. So in order to understand what this means at the end of the study, we look at the building plan from the developer. We then consider what are the trees of interest to be cut, the requirements for planting, minus the planting credits. This gives you the financial compensation required. So this is every tree which remains to be planted can either be paid for by a cost of $500 per tree or planted on the site. And the option, if there isn't enough space on the site to plant a tree, we can accept a site which is close by, and then they would have an option to plant their trees on an adjacent site if there is limited space. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the trees of interest are based on the minimum of 30 centimeters or more. We're looking for indigenous and resistant species. The trees are not going to just remain there for 5 or 10 years, but trees that are going to remain there for 100 years. A live crown, no major faults in the structure or the rooting of the tree. So every site is different. Here are 2 examples. You have a site which is near a waterway, a Acadian forest that had not been cultivated or not been cut. In this case, there are 40 or 50 trees of interest compared to the case on the right, which is almost the same size, but there's only 1 tree of interest on that whole site. So on the protected wooded areas on the right side, you have the option of saving many trees, but depending on the left case, what you want to save, what is being cut on, is going to have an impact on the compensation rates at the end of the project. Well, to come back to this, it creates an incentive to protect mature trees and also to protect the waterways. That has to be taken into effect. So you're not authorized to cut down all the trees, but you can ask the Environment Services if a certain part of the buffer within. So what we encourage is a supplementary encouragement to maintain those trees.
section, on parle des
Okay,
projets
in the next section, this is about projects that are within the area in question, but for other reasons than the development of housing or streets. So in these cases, we evaluate all trees. If we exclude our native trees, then we'll be losing a lot of native trees here as well. So we conduct an exhaustive assessment of the arbs. And so in this case, we had 83 certificates that were issued for a total of 175 trees that were cut on private land. There were 4 cases where trees had to be replanted because we were falling below the minimum threshold, depending on based on the facade, the size of the facade. And then 6 requests were refused because we considered the trees were healthy and they were not posing a hazard. So then, now Justin will tell us about the way or the method here that's used. So the method is based on the SIA method, and it depends on a lot of things: the roots, the trunk, so the supporting branches, foliage, the species rating as well. So I said we encourage different types of trees. So oak trees instead of poplars, for example. And then we take into account the percentage of wood cover remaining on the lot, as well as the risk assessment. So what sites are close by, what would be the impact of taking down trees. These are all kind of factors that are taken into consideration when we're doing the calculation. And then we end up with a final score. And if it's above the threshold, then we suggest saving the tree. And if it's below, then we authorize cutting. And then just to go over quickly the 4 declarations, the declaration of cutting that we had. There weren't a lot. There were 3 that were involved in construction projects, new construction projects. We were, in most cases, these are large pieces of land. They will maintain a wooded area on the lot. But our tools may not be precise enough to cover all the different scenarios that present themselves. But we're talking about roughly 4,200 square meters of trees that were cut in these 4 cases. Based on the feedback that we received during the construction period, we received feedback on the deposit for private individuals, and I think these can be big amounts, $500 per tree per person. So we put in a waiver so the person can sign a waiver to not pay, and if they do not, they don't replant the tree within the allotted time, there's a fine. So if somebody has an emergency where they don't have to cut the tree right away. We had feedback as well on the quality of the tree studies. We work a lot with Justin Simon on our technology. We were able to obtain a high precision GPS that was under use, and it gives us more precise maps, and it avoids misunderstandings. With a draining channel, if we're off by a few meters, that can have an impact on plans. So we worked on that. We had a lot of clarifications with regard to subdivisions as well. There were a lot of subdivisions that were exempted because they started before the bylaw came into effect. So what, once the subdivision is approved by so subdivisions were an issue this year. And in the other projects, developers will need documentation. So, and that's where we've got a lot of resistance. The common practice was to go and cut the trees and then prepare the land and then apply for permits. So we've changed the practice, and there's been a bit of resistance. And this is something that we're committed to doing, is consulting with the sector. But we're still seeing projects where where trees were cut just before the bylaw came into effect, and nothing has been done yet on that land. So we're trying to kind of to explain the bylaw to developers. We continue that work. For your next steps, it's only been 6 months since the bylaw came into effect. So now we're seeing lots of different types of development projects, and what we propose is to maintain the application of the bylaw as it stands. We've committed to consulting with the industry this spring to clarify certain things, and we want to comply with the bylaw, and we plan to come back to you in the fall with a detailed report. So that's basically the situation, and we're here to answer your questions now. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. All right, let's start from right to left. Councillor Gaudette. Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question. What's the process? Let's say, I want to develop some land. How do you notify developers? Well, the development service offers a plan revision service. So often developers will submit preliminary plans. So at that time, we contact those people and we say that there's a tree bylaw. And we also go through the planning department as well. So for anyone who wants to construction, to do some development, we contact them immediately. We go and visit the site, and we can make adjustments. Are you aware of all the construction that's going on in Dieppe? Well, all the legal construction, yes, we're aware of it. There might be, areas where we don't know what's happening, but yeah, we deal with all. We're in the same permit. We use the same computer software as the development services. So when a plan arrives, and there has to be a review of other services in terms of mapping and we participate in the revision of those plans. So our permits are interconnected. Okay, here's my last question then. So let's say, is it possible to go and see how many trees were cut and replaced on a given subdivision? How can I get that information? Well, you'd need, if you're not the applicant, you would need to make an access to information request. I don't know what we can provide in terms of plans, but it's a public process that's documented. Okay, well, if I just wanted to know the number of trees that were cut and how many were, well, that's something that we want to improve, but we're not doing, we do an inventory of trees of interest, but we don't calculate all the trees that are on a given site for a project. Well, I just, I noticed a couple weeks ago when I went by, I noticed people were cutting trees there. And yeah, well, they've been working on their application for a long time. We did a study with on the trees of interest. We're not there to slow down projects once they're approved. We don't want to slow down projects. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Brideau. Oh, I don't. I turned my button off. All right. Councillor Lantang, please. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's a very bold bylaw. We're a leader in this area, and it's it's not everybody's happy with it, but it's a good thing. I had reservations in terms of single family homes, but I'm happy to see that you're listening to residents. One of the complaints that I have received on numerous occasions was that $500 per tree cost. For a major developer, it's a reasonable amount, but for an individual, it can be a lot of money. So thank you for listening to these people, and thank you for adapting to them. And we'll see. We'll reevaluate the situation later on to see if there are things that we can do to improve the project. So it's not an easy job that you're doing. It's something new, and people can be a bit rude, but it's something that needed to be done. Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Thank you, Your Worship. My question has to do with other projects within the intervention area. You said that there were 6 applications that were turned down. Now, when you turn down an application and the owner chooses not to cut trees, do you make recommendations in terms of how to maintain the tree? What do you do? Often it's not trees that are dead, often, if the tree is dead, we'll approve it being cutting, but often it's, the tree is too big, or people are tired of, sweeping up leaves and that type of thing. They're not necessarily a public danger usually, but that's those cases that we turn down. All right, thank you. Councillor Leboutier. I have 2 questions. One has to do with, when you come back and you tell us, here are some of the challenges that we're facing. Do we have surveys for people who have permits? How do you go about that part? Well, that's something that we want to look at. We want to have, an appreciation survey after the service. That'll be part of our industry consultation exercise. We'll look at the best format to reach the industry. But in terms of people who went through the authorization or the permit process, that's something that we'd like to look at. We'll maybe contacting them directly. It's something that we should have put in our form, a line saying, I authorize the city to contact us, but we're looking at other ways of contacting them and to get some feedback. Now, everything is computerized, right? It's not, these aren't manual forms. Well, people have access to forms. We don't have an online platform yet. That's something that we're developing with the IT department for construction permits. And we will be part of those steps. But right now, people can submit a PDF form by email. All right. When you say that you're going to consult the industry, how are you going to consult them? Okay, well, that remains to be seen yet. We have to figure that out. We'll probably invite them to an information session, but we have a strategy that we're going to be developing this spring. All right, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jeannet. Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of individuals in single house dwellings, I was surprised to see the figures. I would have thought have saved more trees in that. So I was surprised by those statistics. Could you explain the reasons? You know, these trees are on people's land, so why weren't there more trees saved among residents there? There were a few cases where, you know, people just kind of let go or abandoned their permit. But, you know, with the statistics that Justin used, we used a formula that's recognized elsewhere, but you know, we can adjust the weighting of those statistics and target, you know, if we want to focus more on native species or remaining forest cover, we can do that. We can play with that formula. But for now, we don't want to create too much of an issue. We want people to adapt to the process. So we used a form that was maybe more permissive. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Brideau.
Thank you, Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Your Worship. I want to come back to a point that my colleague Councillor Lantagne raised. I had an experience last fall, and when you talk about the cost of $500 for a permit application, my fear was that I'm a victim of a tree of the neighbor that fell on my land. Then I have to talk to Justin and what happened with, but what I appreciate is that they came and looked at what had happened. They realized that the tree was dead when it fell after Fiona passed through, and it was rotten. It fell completely onto my property. But it was my responsibility to ask for the permit to get rid of my neighbor's trees. So this was something that I didn't understand at the outset. However, I observed how the work happens, and I thought things went very professionally in how that was handled. So thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brideau. I see no further questions. However, I do have one. Now, in the considerations that you have for replacing trees, do you take into consideration the whole issue of climate change? Because clearly, the trees that we planted 30 years ago, or 40 years ago for that matter, and today, well, with climate change, are there any consequences because of that? Currently, no. However, we are assessing, along with Justin's project, is to put a management plan in for urban forestry. So we'll be looking at that matter with the help of professionals. Our friends, the researchers, will certainly guide us. But it's a good question because quite clearly, through species selection for trees of interest, this was something that was taken into consideration. Our consultant with whom we worked to help us identify the trees of interest put this in their selection guide for native resistant trees. So with regard to planting, we do not have these guidelines in place, but that's something that's going to be put into place very definitely. Thank you. I see no further questions. So thank you for your presentation. And we'll see you again. Good job. Your job is not an easy one, but it was very well done. This concludes the agenda for this evening's meeting, and I wish you all a very pleasant end of evening.